The battlefield was silent now, but it was not peace. The wind carried the smell of smoke, metal, and burnt flesh. Crashed ships and broken weapons covered the ground like fallen bones of giants. Once this land had been full of life. Now only shadows and sparks remained. Captain Ryan Hale, a human soldier, walked slowly through the ruins. His armor was cracked, his helmet half melted from plasma fire. The war between humans and the alien Varkan Empire had lasted for years, and this was just another destroyed world in a long list of many. But something about this place felt different. His radio buzzed weakly. "Squad Bravo, report. Any survivors?" Ryan pressed the button, but only static replied. He sighed. He was alone. He moved carefully, scanning the wreckage. Every few steps, something groaned beneath the ash. Twisted metal or dying machines. Then from somewhere ahead he heard it. A faint broken sound. Not mechanical. A voice, it was a whisper, weak but desperate. "Help! Me!" Ryan froze. He raised his weapon, his eyes narrowing. The voice was coming from behind a pile of fallen armor plating. He moved closer, stepping over blood-stained debris. As he reached the source, his breath caught. It was a Varkan warrior, one of the enemy. She lay half buried under the remains of a destroyed hover tank. Her crimson skin was cut and burned, her once shining armor crushed. Her lower body was twisted beneath the metal. It was clear she could not move. For a moment, Ryan stood still, gun aimed. His training told him to walk away. The Varkans were merciless killers, known for destroying entire colonies. They never took prisoners. Why should he help her? But then she opened her eyes, golden and bright even through the pain. They weren't the eyes of a monster. They were the eyes of someone who wanted to live. "Please," she whispered again, her voice trembling. "I can't feel my legs." Ryan's heartbeat quickened. He looked around. No one else was here. No backup, no witnesses, just him and a dying enemy. He lowered his weapon slightly, torn between instinct and something deeper, something human. He dropped to one knee and grabbed a piece of metal, trying to lift it. It didn't move. He tried again, gritting his teeth, his muscles shaking. The alien looked at him in confusion. "Why, are you helping me?" Ryan didn't answer at first. He pushed harder, managing to shift the beam enough for her to breathe more easily. "Because," he finally said, panting, "you're alive." A strange silence followed. The alien blinked as if she couldn't understand those words. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the air. Drone engines. Ryan's eyes shot upward. Enemy scanners. The Varkans were sweeping the area for survivors. If they saw him helping her, both of them would be vaporized on sight. "Quiet," he whispered, grabbing his rifle and scanning the sky. He could see their red lights moving between the smoke clouds. "They will kill you if they find you with me," she murmured weakly. Ryan gave a faint grin. "Then they better not find us." He threw his rifle over his shoulder, crouched low, and started digging around the debris. Bit by bit, he freed her upper body. She cried out as he lifted the heavy beam from her waist, but he didn't stop. Every second mattered. When the last piece came loose, she fell forward into his arms. Her body was cold and trembling. She was heavier than he expected, all muscle and armor. Still, he carried her, stumbling toward a line of ruined vehicles nearby. Behind them, the drone's scanning lights moved closer. Ryan ducked behind a fallen ship, breathing hard. He checked her pulse, weak but steady. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Saraka," she whispered. "Commander of the 5th Legion." Ryan's eyebrows rose. A commander. One of the highest-ranking enemies. Helping her could mean court-martial. Or worse. But he looked at her face again. The dirt, the blood. The tears she tried to hide. And something inside him refused to walk away. "All right. Commander Saraka," he muttered, adjusting her weight on his shoulder. "Let's get you out of here." He crawled from one wreck to another, using the smoke for cover. The heat from burning metal burned his gloves, but he kept moving. Every few seconds, the drone's red lights passed dangerously close. Once, a beam of plasma fire struck just meters from them, sending sparks across the ground. Saraka gasped in pain as her armor flared. Ryan quickly covered her mouth, whispering, "Stay quiet, please." She nodded, her golden eyes locked on his. When they finally reached the edge of the battlefield, Ryan spotted a small crater, deep enough to hide. He slid down with her in his arms, collapsing at the bottom, both of them covered in ash. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of distant engines faded away. Only the wind remained. Saved me, Siraka said softly. No one else would. Ryan looked at her, his face tired but calm. Maybe that's what makes us human. She stared at him, confused but curious. For the first time in her life, an enemy had shown her mercy. The silence of the battlefield returned, not peaceful, but heavy, alive with a new kind of tension. Two soldiers from opposite sides sat hidden beneath the smoke, their fates now tied together by one impossible act of compassion. Above them, the dark clouds shifted. In the distance, the war still raged. But for this moment, in this small crater of broken earth, something different began. Something that could change everything. The night sky burned red with distant explosions. Every flash of light revealed broken ships, dead soldiers, and rivers of smoke rising like ghosts. The war was far from over, but on this ruined world, two lives still clung to a thin thread of hope. A wounded alien warrior and the human soldier who refused to abandon her. Captain Ryan Hale pressed his back against a piece of metal wall, breathing fast. He held his rifle close, eyes scanning the glowing horizon. Beside him, Sarah Ka, the paralyzed alien commander, tried to stay conscious. Her armor was cracked and her blood, dark and glowing faintly blue, and soaked through the ground. "You shouldn't have come back," she said weakly. "Your people will think you've lost your mind." Ryan didn't look at her. "They already think that," he muttered, checking his ammo. "Only 2 clips left. But I'm not leaving you here." She looked at him, studying the human's face lit by the orange light of burning wrecks. He was exhausted, covered in dust, yet his eyes were still sharp. Humans were strange, small, fragile creatures who never knew when to give up. A sound cut through the silence. Whir. Ryan stiffened. Drones again. Their engines hummed in the distance like hungry insects searching for prey. He crouched low, motioning for silence. "They're sweeping the area," Sarah whispered. "They'll find us." "Not if we move now." He slid her arm over his shoulders. She groaned in pain, but tried to help him lift her. Her legs dragged uselessly across the dirt, leaving 2 long trails behind. Ryan winced at the sound. Any noise could get them killed. Step by step, he carried her through the burning wreckage. The heat was unbearable. Smoke made it hard to breathe. Once, a nearby explosion threw them both to the ground. Ryan's ears rang as metal rained down around them. His arms trembled, but he refused to stop. "You're insane," Sarah hissed. "Why do this for me? I was your enemy." Ryan gritted his teeth. "Maybe you were. But right now, you're just someone who needs help." She stared at him for a long moment, unable to reply. No one from her own kind had shown her that mercy. Not even her soldiers. They reached the edge of the battlefield where the land sloped down into a cracked plain. In the distance, Ryan could see the faint outline of an old bunker, maybe human, maybe alien. It didn't matter. It was cover, but getting there meant crossing open ground under drone patrols. He studied the sky. 2 drones circled, red lights scanning side to side. Ryan waited until one turned away, then whispered, "Now." He half-carried, half-dragged Sarah down the slope. The ground was soft and uneven, every movement kicking up dust. She bit her lip to stay quiet. Ryan could feel her breathing quicken against his shoulder. Halfway across, a red beam swept over the ground. The drone had turned back. Ryan froze, heart pounding. The beam passed just inches away from them. Any movement, even a breath, could reveal them. For several tense seconds, neither moved. The only sound was the low hum of the drones and the distant crack of gunfire miles away. Then finally, the light shifted away. Ryan exhaled. Almost there. When they reached the bunker door, it was jammed shut. He set Sarah down carefully and tried forcing it open. It didn't budge. "Great," he muttered. "Of course." She watched him struggle, her voice weak but steady. "The control panel. Left side." He found it, cracked but still working. With his combat knife, he cut 2 wires and crossed them. Sparks flew and the door hissed open halfway before stopping. "Just enough space to crawl through. Go," he said, lifting her gently. She frowned. "You first." "Not a chance." He pushed her through the gap, then followed right behind, pulling the rifle in after him. The door shut again, trapping them in near darkness. The inside smelled like rust and oil. Old lights flickered dimly along the ceiling. Ryan set Sarah down against the wall and searched the room. It was a supply bunker, half empty, but there were still crates, blankets, even a few med packs. He opened one and started cleaning the wounds on her back and shoulders. She winced but didn't stop him. "You're trained for this?" "Combat medic," he said simply. "Before they made me a killer." Sarah's eyes softened. "You could have left me to die. It would have been easier." Ryan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the pride behind the pain. Easy doesn't mean right. For a moment, there was silence between them. The war outside roared on, but inside that bunker, something fragile began to grow. Trust. She spoke again, quieter this time. "My people will come. They'll kill you for helping me." He gave a tired grin. "Then they better fly fast." The tension broke for a brief moment. She even laughed. A dry, painful laugh that sounded strange to her own ears. Hours passed. Ryan reinforced the door with metal sheets and reloaded his rifle. Outside, drone lights moved across the horizon, searching. Inside, the bunker felt like another world, one where enemies didn't exist. When Sarah finally closed her eyes, Ryan sat beside her, his own body aching. He whispered to himself, "One night. We just have to survive one night." But far away in the darkness, more engines began to hum, not just drones this time, but troop carriers. They were coming. And when they arrived, no one would care who saved whom. Ryan tightened his grip on his weapon and looked at Sarah sleeping beside him. "Guess tomorrow's going to be even worse," he murmured. Outside, the world burned brighter. When morning came, the world outside the bunker was painted in smoke and dust. The sun struggled to break through the gray sky, and every shadow moved like an enemy. Captain Ryan Hale stood at the narrow window slit, scanning the wasteland that stretched beyond the ruins. His body ached from the night's struggle, but his mind was sharper than ever. Behind him, Sarika stirred awake. Her breathing was uneven, her body trembling from exhaustion. Her lower limbs were still motionless, and the once proud armor of a Varkon commander was now nothing but cracked metal and bloodstains. "Morning already?" she muttered weakly, her golden eyes blinking at the dim light. Ryan turned to her with a faint smile. "If you can call this morning." He offered her a canteen. "Drink, you'll need your strength." She took it silently, watching him as she drank. There was something about this human, something that didn't fit the picture her people had painted of his kind. Humans were supposed to be selfish, cruel, and power-hungry, but this one, he stayed. "Why do you still help me?" she asked quietly. "You've done enough. You can go now." Ryan shook his head. "Not until you're safe." Her jaw tightened. "Safe? For me, that word no longer exists." Ryan didn't argue. He simply slung his pack over his shoulder and crouched beside her. "Then we'll find a new meaning for it." He lifted her carefully, ignoring the pain shooting through his arms. The bunker's airlock opened with a rusty hiss, revealing a wasteland bathed in dull red light. The air outside was hot and dry. Waves of heat shimmered over the distant plains. They began to move. Ryan carried her part of the way and dragged her armor piece by piece when the path got too rough. Every few hundred meters, he stopped to rest, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Around them lay the skeletons of war, crashed ships, rusted turrets, and empty helmets half buried in the sand. Once, the Varkon Empire and the Human Alliance had fought over this planet like scavengers over a carcass. Now neither side truly owned it. It belonged to the dead. As they crossed a broken ridge, the ground trembled slightly. Ryan froze. He lowered Sarah and crouched, scanning the horizon. Something massive moved in the distance. A patrolling drone tank, half machine, half organic. Its metallic legs dug into the soil, searching for heat signatures. He whispered, "Stay still." Sarah nodded, her hand gripping his arm tightly. The machine's sensor light passed dangerously close to them. Ryan covered her with his cloak, praying the camouflage netting still worked. Seconds turned into long, painful minutes. Then the tank turned away, disappearing behind the wreckage. Ryan let out a shaky breath. "That was too close." Sarah looked at him, her voice low. "You risked death for a stranger," Ryan smirked. "You're not a stranger anymore." For the first time, her lips curved into the smallest hint of a smile. "Humans are strange creatures." "Yeah," Ryan said, adjusting his grip under her arms. "We get that a lot." They continued until nightfall, stopping at the entrance of a crashed transport ship. Inside, Ryan found some emergency supplies. Half-broken energy cells, a few protein packs, and an old med kit. He used the small flashlight to check Sarah's wounds. Her body was healing slower now, and her breathing had grown shallow. "You're burning up," he said, touching her forehead. Your implants, they're short-circuiting. She looked away. Without Varkan medicine, I won't survive long. Ryan stared at the damaged metal along her spine, glowing faintly blue. Then I'll fix it. You're not an engineer, she whispered. No, he said, pulling out a human repair kit. But I'm good at learning fast. He worked for hours, using wires and salvaged parts to stabilize her implants. Sparks flew several times, and once he burned his fingers, but he didn't stop. When he finally reconnected a power node, Sarah gasped as a pulse ran through her body. Her mechanical veins glowed brighter. She looked at him, stunned. You actually did it. He shrugged, wiping the sweat from his face. Told you I learned quick. A silence followed. Not cold, not awkward, but warm. Sarah studied his face under the flickering light, wondering how someone so human could act with such resolve. You could have left me when I slowed you down, she said softly. I don't leave people behind, Ryan replied. Not even aliens. Outside, the wind howled through the wreckage. Ryan sat down beside her, exhausted, his back against the wall. He looked up through a crack in the ceiling. Stars glittered faintly through the dust. Back home, he said quietly. We look at the stars and wonder if someone's out there. Funny thing is, now I'm out here and I wonder if anyone back home is looking up at me. Sarah followed his gaze. Your people fight for hope, she said. Mine fight for victory. Maybe that's why. We always lose. Ryan smiled faintly. Maybe you just needed better company. She turned her head toward him, her golden eyes reflecting the faint starlight. You're either the bravest human I've met or the most foolish. Probably both, he replied, half smiling. For a long while, they said nothing. Only the soft hum of her implants filled the silence. In that dark, broken ship surrounded by death and ruin, a strange peace settled between them. The kind born not from safety, but from understanding. Outside, the distant sound of engines echoed again. Ryan tensed. He peered through the crack and saw faint lights moving across the horizon. Search patrols. They were heading straight for the wreck. He clenched his jaw. We can't stay here. Sarah tried to sit up, pain flashing in her eyes. Then where do we go? Ryan tightened his pack and chambered his rifle. As far as it takes. He lifted her again, stepping out into the cold night air. The wasteland stretched endlessly ahead, broken, deadly, and silent. But this time they didn't move as enemies. They moved as something far rarer. Two souls, human and alien, bound together by survival and a flicker of hope that refused to die. By the third day, the wasteland had turned cruel. The twin suns burned the ground until even the wind carried dust like knives. Captain Ryan Hale had stopped counting his blisters long ago. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest, but he refused to stop. In his arms, Saraka had grown weaker. Her breathing came in short gasps, her once fierce voice now barely a whisper. Put me down, she murmured, eyes half closed. You'll die before we find anything. Ryan tightened his grip. Not happening. We're close. She wanted to argue, but she didn't have the strength, so she let him carry her, her head resting weakly against his shoulder. The rhythmic crunch of his boots and the hiss of wind were the only sounds in the empty world. As night fell, the horizon flickered with faint lights. Movement, maybe civilization. Ryan adjusted his visor and zoomed in. It was a settlement, small, built from scrap metal and old starship parts. Not military, but alive. Hold on, he whispered, a rare smile forming. We found people. When they reached the gates, armed guards appeared, their weapons raised. Their uniforms were mismatched, scavenger gear with human and alien markings. A rough voice barked from behind a metal barricade. Stop right there! Identify yourself. Ryan raised one hand slowly. Captain Ryan Hale, Earth Alliance. I've got a wounded. The moment they saw the crimson-skinned alien in his arms, every rifle aimed at him. A Varkan? One of them spat. He's carrying a Varkan. Ryan's voice was calm but firm. She's injured. She's no threat. The guards exchanged uneasy looks. The leader, a bearded man with a scar down his cheek, stepped forward. We lost half our people because of her kind. You think we're giving her a bed? She'll die out here, Ryan said, stepping closer. Then let her die, the man growled. One less monster in the galaxy. Ryan's jaw tightened. He looked at Sarah. Her eyes were closed, her skin pale beneath the dust. He turned back to the guard. I'm not asking for your opinion. I'm asking for help. The man raised his rifle. And I'm giving you my answer. The standoff lasted only seconds, but it felt eternal. The wind whistled between them, carrying the distant echo of thunder. Finally, a woman's voice called from behind the gate, calm but commanding. Let them in. The guards hesitated but obeyed. The metal gate slid open with a screech. A tall woman in patched armor stepped out. Her right arm was mechanical and her face bore the marks of radiation scars. I'm Lyra, leader of Haven Outpost, she said. If she tries anything, both of you die. Understand? Ryan nodded once. Understood. They carried Sarah inside and laid her on a metal cot. Medics arrived but froze when they saw her alien features. Lyra crossed her arms. I said treat her, not stare at her. As the medics began working, Ryan stood nearby watching anxiously. Sarah's breathing steadied slightly as they cleaned her wounds. Lyra studied Ryan silently for a long while. You're serious about saving her? She asked. Ryan nodded. She's alive. That's all that matters, Lyra frowned. You've got a strange sense of loyalty, Captain. She's your enemy. Ryan met her eyes. Maybe she was. But she's also someone who was left behind. I don't abandon people, Lyra didn't reply. She just shook her head and walked away. Hours later, when Sarah finally woke, the outpost was quiet. Ryan sat beside her, exhausted but awake. She looked around, confused. Where are we? Human settlement, he replied softly. They're helping. For now, she repeated, her voice bitter. Your people hate mine. You can't trust them. He smiled faintly. You sound like me 3 days ago. Before she could answer, the door slammed open. Lyra stormed in, holding a data pad. You didn't tell us she's Commander Siraka, Varkan 5th Legion. Ryan froze. You checked her records? Lyra's eyes burned with anger. She led the attack on Colony Theta. Hundreds dead, civilians, children. Ryan's expression darkened. That was war. War? Lyra hissed. You call that war? You're protecting a murderer. Sarah's voice cracked as she tried to sit up. I never wanted that attack. I followed orders, Lyra snapped. Don't lie to me. Ryan stood between them. Enough. His voice echoed through the room. She's not your enemy anymore. She's my responsibility. Lyra looked at him, shocked. You've lost your mind. Maybe, Ryan said quietly. But at least I haven't lost my humanity. For a moment, no one spoke. The tension was like a blade drawn tight. Then Lyra turned and stormed out, shouting, At dawn, you both leave. We don't want your kind here. When the door shut, Sarah stared at Ryan, guilt heavy in her eyes. She's right, she whispered. I don't deserve your help. Ryan knelt beside her, his voice softer now. You deserved a chance to change. That's more than most people ever get. Her golden eyes shimmered under the dim light. You're a fool, human. Yeah, he said with a tired grin. But I'm your fool. Outside, the outpost lights flickered as the desert wind howled. Inside, a broken commander and a weary soldier sat in silence. Two enemies in a world that had stopped caring who was right or wrong. And beyond the walls, unseen in the darkness, glowing red eyes watched from the dunes. The Varkan search party had finally found their lost commander, but they didn't know she was no longer one of them. The next morning, the desert wind carried a strange silence. It wasn't the calm before peace, it was the calm before destruction. The twin suns barely rose above the smoky horizon, and Captain Ryan Hale could already feel the air grow heavier. Something was coming. Inside the outpost, soldiers and scavengers prepared their weapons. People moved nervously between barricades and turrets made from old ship parts. The air was thick with tension. Ryan stood near the main gate, his armor scorched and patched together with scavenged pieces. His rifle hung over his shoulder and his jaw was set in grim focus. Behind him, Siraka lay on a stretcher, her golden eyes open, watching the chaos unfold. She looked weak but alert. You feel it too, she whispered. Ryan nodded. They found us. Lyra, the outpost leader, approached, her mechanical arm gleaming in the dull light. You brought this, she snapped. Your alien friend sent a signal. They're tracking her. Ryan glared back. She didn't send anything. They're tracking her biometrics, Lyra scoffed. Whatever it is, your compassion just doomed us all. Before Ryan could reply, the ground began to vibrate. Faint at first, then stronger, like thunder rolling across steel. The sky turned red as dust clouds rose in the distance. Varkan troop carriers shaped like monstrous insects crawled toward the outpost. Their engines screamed like banshees. Sarah tried to push herself up. My people. They came for me. Ryan checked his rifle. Then we'd better make sure they don't leave with you. Lyra shouted orders to her crew. Everyone to positions. Activate the turrets. Ryan moved fast, helping drag crates of ammunition to the walls. As the first plasma blast struck, the ground shook violently. Bolts of green fire tore through the barricades, sending metal shards flying. The smell of ozone filled the air. The outpost erupted into chaos. Humans and aliens who once distrusted each other now fought side by side out of pure survival. Ryan fired from the front line, his rifle kicking against his shoulder as he hit one drone after another. Sparks exploded across the walls as enemy rounds tore through the defenses. Behind him, Sarah struggled to sit upright, gripping a damaged plasma rifle. Give me a weapon, she demanded. Ryan turned, surprised. You can barely move. Then I'll die fighting. Her voice carried the strength of a commander again. He didn't argue. He tossed her a rifle and took cover beside her stretcher. Together they fired, one human, one alien, covering each other's blind spots. Every shot echoed through the dust-filled sky. When a plasma grenade landed nearby, Ryan threw himself over her, shielding her from the blast. The explosion knocked him hard into the wall, ears ringing. Sarah looked at him, stunned. Why would you? Because I said I wouldn't leave you, he grunted, getting back up. The Varkan soldiers broke through the first barricade. Tall, armored and merciless, they advanced like a metallic tide. Their leader, a towering alien in jet-black armor, raised his spear and shouted something in the Varkan tongue, a declaration of capture. Sarah's expression hardened. That's General Corvell. He was my superior. Ryan reloaded his rifle. Old boss, huh? Yes, she said, eyes narrowing. And he'll kill you just to make an example. Then let's make it worth his trouble. They fought side by side as the enemy pushed closer. Every moment was a blur of fire and screams. Ryan moved like a machine, his training guiding his hands even as exhaustion burned through him. Sarah, though still half paralyzed, fired with deadly precision, her shots cutting through Varkan armor. At one point, Ryan saw a child, a young scavenger, trapped under fallen debris. Without hesitation, he ran through open fire to lift the wreckage and drag the boy to safety. Plasma bolts scorched his armor, but he didn't stop. Sarah watched, stunned by the sheer recklessness of it. You risked your life for a stranger again. He gave her a half smile. Old habit, the battle dragged on. The outpost's turrets exploded one by one. The defenders were down to their last rounds. Lyra shouted from the command tower, We can't hold much longer. Ryan looked at Sarah, his voice firm but calm. We have one chance. You said your people respect strength. Let's give them a reason to stand down. She hesitated. You can't win against Corvell. Ryan smiled faintly. Maybe not, but maybe I can remind them what honor looks like. He stepped out from cover, rifle in hand, and walked toward the advancing enemy line. Blaster bolts scorched the ground around him, but he didn't stop. Dust swirled around his boots as the red sun glowed behind him, turning his figure into a shadow of defiance. Corvell roared, Human, drop your weapon! Ryan shouted back, You want your commander? Come and earn her. The alien army hesitated. Even Corvell froze for a moment, his metallic spear trembling in his grip. Then behind Ryan a voice rose, strong, echoing through the chaos. Stand down, General. Sarah had pulled herself upright, leaning on a broken wall for support. Her plasma rifle hummed as it charged, glowing blue in her trembling hands. Corvell's eyes widened. Commander, you live? I live, she said coldly, and I no longer fight for you. With one final shot, she blasted the insignia off his armor, the mark of their empire. The soldiers around him fell silent. None dared move. Corvell hesitated, rage filling his voice. You betray your kind. Sarah's gaze hardened. No, I learned what honor truly means from a human. For the first time, the battlefield went still. The Varkan troops slowly lowered their weapons. Ryan turned to her, breathing hard. You did it. She gave him a faint smile, tears glimmering in her golden eyes. No, we did. Then her body gave out, collapsing against the rubble. Ryan caught her before she hit the ground. Around them, the Varkans stood motionless, unsure whether to bow or retreat. The sun finally broke through the clouds, bathing the broken outpost in gold. The war, at least here, had stopped. Not by victory, but by the courage of two souls who refused to see each other as enemies. Days passed since the battle ended. The smoke had cleared, but the smell of burnt metal and blood still clung to the wind. The once chaotic outpost now stood half destroyed yet alive, wounded, but breathing. Inside the remains of the command tower, Captain Ryan Hale sat beside a medical cot, his eyes fixed on the unconscious figure of Saraka. Her once brilliant crimson armor had been stripped away, replaced by layers of human medical bandages and temporary cybernetic supports. Her body looked fragile, almost human now. Her usual fire dimmed but not gone. Ryan hadn't slept properly in days. He sat with his elbows on his knees, head bowed, listening to the steady hum of the medical equipment. The monitors beeped softly, slow, stable, alive. Every beat reminded him why he had stayed. "You really don't know when to quit, do you?" came a familiar voice. Ryan looked up to see Lyra, her mechanical arm glinting as she leaned against the doorway. She gave him a wry smile.
"You saved her and somehow saved this place too."
"Never thought I'd say that about a man who brought a Varkan here." Ryan sighed. "She saved us just as much as I saved her." Lyra crossed her arms. "You could have let her die. No one would have blamed you." He looked back at Sarah. "Yeah, but I would have blamed myself." For a long moment, Lyra said nothing. Then she nodded once, her voice softer. "The medics say she'll live, but she won't walk again unless she gets proper augmentation. And we don't have that kind of tech." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Then I'll find it." Ryan, the nearest functioning Alliance base, is 100 miles east, across open desert crawling with scavengers and rogue machines. "You'll never make it." He looked at her, determination burning in his tired eyes. "Then I'll die trying," Lyra exhaled sharply. "You really are impossible." The next day, Ryan left before dawn with an old transport bike, returning 3 days later, half dead and covered in dust, but carrying a black crate marked Human Alliance Biorepair Division. Inside it were 2 advanced cybernetic prosthetics, sleek, flexible, and designed for battlefield use. The medic stared in disbelief as he placed them down. "Install them," he said simply. They worked for hours while Ryan stood outside the room listening. Sparks, clicks, mechanical pulses, and then silence. When the door finally opened, Sarah sat upright, her golden eyes faintly glowing again. Her new legs, polished silver with faint blue veins, flexed carefully as she tried to stand. At first, she stumbled. Ryan rushed forward, catching her before she fell. "Easy," he said softly. "They'll take time to adjust." Her voice trembled. "These are human designs?" He nodded. "Strong, fast, durable. They're yours now." She looked down at them, alien flesh meeting human metal, and then up at him. "You replaced what I lost." Ryan smiled faintly. "No, I just gave you a second chance to stand." The moment hung between them, quiet, powerful, almost sacred. As days passed, Sarah trained relentlessly. Each step was a battle, each movement a victory. Ryan stayed by her side, helping her learn balance again. At first, her steps were shaky, then confident, and finally, powerful, like the warrior she once was. One evening, as the sun dipped low, she walked to the edge of the outpost alone. Ryan followed a few steps behind. "You humans," she said, looking at the horizon. "You fight even when the world tells you to give up." "I never understood that before." He smiled slightly. "We fight because hope is the only thing we can't afford to lose." She turned toward him, her expression softer than ever. "And you gave that hope to me," Ryan shrugged. "Guess it's contagious." A faint laugh escaped her, the first he had ever heard from her. "If my people could see me now," she murmured, "they'd call me weak." Ryan met her eyes. "Then they've never been strong." They stood there for a long while, watching the sun sink below the horizon. Around them, survivors rebuilt the walls, welding steel and stone, making something new out of ruin, just as the 2 of them had done for themselves. Later that night, Sarah found Ryan near the fire pit, sharpening his rifle. She sat beside him, her metal legs reflecting the orange glow. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. "When I return to my people, they'll expect me to continue the war." Ryan didn't look up. "And what will you tell them?" She hesitated, then answered firmly, "That the war is over for me. I've seen what honor looks like, and it doesn't come from conquest." He stopped sharpening and looked at her, truly seeing her, not as an alien, not as an enemy, but as something far more. You're not the same commander I found on that battlefield, she smiled faintly. And you're not just a soldier anymore. The night wind stirred the fire. Sparks floated into the sky like small stars. For the first time since the war began, Sarah felt peace. Fragile, uncertain, but real. She reached out and placed a hand on Ryan's. Her touch was warm despite the metal. "Thank you," she whispered. Ryan looked down at her hand, then back at her face. "You don't owe me thanks." Her golden eyes softened. "No, Captain. You don't understand. You didn't just save my life. You reminded me how to live." The stars above shimmered brighter that night, as if the universe itself paused to witness the fragile connection between two souls who were never meant to meet, yet somehow completed each other. The war outside might never truly end, but here, under the twin moons of a forgotten world, humanity had already won. The twin moons rose high over the wasteland, their pale glow spreading across the battered outpost that had once been a war zone. Now it stood quiet, rebuilt with metal walls forged from wreckage and guarded not by soldiers but by survivors. The war between the Human Alliance and the Varkan Empire had finally slowed. Not because of treaties, but because of a single story whispered across the stars. A human soldier who saved an alien commander. Weeks had passed since the battle. Captain Ryan Hale stood near the edge of the outpost, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The wind carried faint static, a signal being broadcast repeatedly across the desert. It wasn't a distress call. It was an invitation. "Your people heard it," he said quietly. Behind him, Sarika stepped forward. Her new cybernetic legs gleamed silver under the moonlight, moving with fluid grace. She stood tall now, no longer a broken warrior, but something greater. A bridge between two enemies. "Yes," she said softly. "They're coming. Not for war this time, but to listen." Ryan turned, studying her. "You sure they'll listen? Last time they came, they tried to burn this place to the ground." She met his eyes, a faint smile touching her lips. "They follow strength, and I intend to show them what true strength means." The next morning, the sky filled with the sound of engines. Dozens of Varkan ships descended from orbit, their sleek black hulls cutting through the clouds. Dust and wind whipped across the outpost as the ships landed in formation, surrounding the compound like a wall of steel. From the lead ship stepped General Corvell, his armor polished and his expression cold. Behind him marched ranks of Varkan soldiers, their weapons glowing faintly. The outpost guards tensed, hands on triggers. But Ryan raised a hand. "No one fires." The air felt electric. Sarah walked past him unarmed, her silver legs glinting under the morning sun. Every step echoed across the silent field. Corvell's voice thundered. "Commander Saraka of the 5th Legion, you stand accused of desertion and collaboration with the human enemy. You will surrender yourself for judgment," the soldiers murmured. Even they seemed uncertain. The sight of her standing alive, part machine, part alien, part something else entirely, it unsettled them. Sarah stopped just meters from the general. "You call it collaboration," she said firmly. "I call it awakening." Corvell's golden eyes narrowed. "You speak blasphemy." "No," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I speak truth." She turned slightly, pointing toward Ryan, who stood watching silently. "This human, this soldier, saved me when my own kind left me to die. He carried me through fire, through hatred, through everything this war has poisoned. And while I lay broken, it wasn't Varkan medicine that saved me. It was human compassion." A ripple passed through the crowd of alien soldiers. Corvell's grip tightened around his spear. "You disgrace your bloodline. The Varkan Empire stands on strength, not pity." Sarah stepped closer, her voice rising. "Then your strength is hollow. You think abandoning the weak makes you powerful? You think mercy is a flaw? I've seen true power. And it lies not in domination, but in honor." Her words struck like a blade. Even the soldiers behind Corvell shifted uneasily. For the first time, doubt flickered in their eyes. Ryan took a slow step forward, standing beside her. "She's right," he said quietly, his voice carrying over the wind. "Strength isn't about crushing others. It's about standing when no one else will. She taught me that as much as I taught her." Corvell's rage erupted. "Silence, human. You think your words can change the will of the Varkan Empire?" Sarah's eyes burned gold. "Not his words, mine." And then she did something no Varkan commander had ever done. She dropped to one knee. Her armor panels hissed softly as she knelt before the general and the gathered soldiers. "In our code," she said, "kneeling means surrender, but I kneel not in defeat. I kneel in truth. I renounce the war, the hate, the endless pride. If the Varkan Empire still believes in honor, then you will listen. Not to orders, but to your hearts. Silence followed. Even the wind stopped. One by one, the soldiers began lowering their weapons. It started with a young warrior near the front, then another, and another. Within moments, an entire legion stood with heads bowed, not in shame, but in respect. Corvel's expression twisted between fury and disbelief. You would bow to a human's mercy? Sarah rose slowly, her mechanical legs humming softly. No, General. They bow to hope. Ryan stood beside her silent as Corvel's defiance finally broke. The old general dropped his weapon, his voice trembling. Then may the stars forgive us all. When the ships departed hours later, they left no fire, no blood, only the sound of engines fading into peace. The Varkan Empire had not surrendered that day, but something far greater had begun. As the last ship vanished, Ryan stood beside Sarah at the edge of the outpost. So, that's it? He asked softly.
You're really going back to them?
She nodded. Someone must show them a different way. He looked down. You'll be their voice. She smiled faintly. And you'll be their proof. Ryan chuckled quietly. You always get the hard job. She stepped closer, the faint hum of her prosthetics filling the silence. You gave me my legs, my life, and something I thought I'd lost, purpose. I'll carry that wherever I go. For a long moment, they simply stood there. Two figures outlined against the rising sun, human and alien, soldier and warrior, enemies no more. Before she boarded her ship, Sarah turned one last time. Her golden eyes met his. If you ever find yourself among the stars near Varka Prime, look to the northern lights. That's where we honor those who remind us what it means to be alive. Ryan gave a faint salute. Then I'll make sure to look up. As her ship ascended, the desert wind swept across the outpost, carrying the faint echo of her voice, a promise born from fire and mercy. That day, the Varkan Empire made a new oath, not of conquest but of compassion. They called it the human oath. And across the stars, wherever the story was told, one truth remained. Humanity didn't just win a battle that day. It changed a galaxy.